Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video. Story 1. I live in rural New Mexico, about 10 miles outside of town, where the nights are black as tar, and the only sounds after sundown are the wind scraping against the desert and the distant cries of coyotes. It's quiet, almost too quiet sometimes, the kind of silence that makes you hear things you shouldn't. My wife, Sarah, and I bought this place a few years back, thinking it would be perfect for raising our son, Daniel. We wanted space, freedom, a place where we could sit on the porch and watch the stars without streetlights dulling the sky. And for a while, it was everything we hoped for. Until last summer. That was when I stopped feeling safe in my own home. That was when I started double-checking the locks and keeping the curtains drawn at night. That was when I learned that sometimes, when something calls your name in the dark, you don't answer. That night, Daniel had been playing in the backyard as the sun slipped behind the hills, casting long, creeping shadows over the desert scrub. I sat on the porch, beer in hand, watching him chase fireflies. It was peaceful, and that way the desert can be before night fully settles in. Then I heard it. "Daddy, come here." At first, nothing seemed wrong. It was Daniel's voice, clear and familiar, but something in my stomach clenched, and I don't know why. Maybe it was the way the words hung in the air a second too long. Maybe it was the way the wind had died completely, as if the desert itself was holding its breath. I stood up, scanning the yard, and there he was, Daniel, standing at the far end of the property near the barbed wire fence, half hidden in the shadows. He wasn't moving. I felt the first real stirrings of unease then, like cold fingers pressing into my back. "Daniel." I called. "Come here, Daddy." It was wrong. Not just the words, but the way he said them. Too flat, too deliberate. Like someone who had practiced a phrase, but didn't quite understand how to make it sound natural. I took a step forward, my pulse suddenly pounding in my ears. And then, "Dad," a soft, uncertain voice from behind me. I turned toward the house. Daniel was standing in the doorway, barefoot, his eyes wide and frightened. My breath hitched. I snapped my head back toward the fence, but the figure, whatever it was gone. A sick, crawling sensation moved through my gut. I grabbed Daniel, yanking him into my arms and rushing inside, slamming the door behind us. My hands were shaking as I locked every bolt, every latch. Sarah asked me what was wrong, but I couldn't explain it. I didn't know how. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening. I wasn't sure for what. I just knew that something wasn't right. And then, at 2 a.m., the scratching started. A slow, deliberate scrape against the wooden walls of the house. Not like the wind or a stray branch. It was rhythmic, intentional. I sat up, my mouth dry as sand. Sarah stirred beside me, muttering in her sleep. Then came the whisper, "Daddy," Daniel's voice. My skin turned to ice. It came from just outside our bedroom window. I turned my head, barely breathing. The curtains were drawn, but I swore I saw a shadow moving behind them. "Daddy," it called again, soft and drawn out, like something trying to coax me outside. I reached the shotgun under my bed, my fingers tightening around the grip. My legs felt weak as I stood, moving toward the window with slow, cautious steps. Then, Just as I reached the curtains, silence. The air in the room felt heavy, suffocating. I could hear my own heartbeat, hammering too fast. I waited for something to happen. And then, just as I started to pull the curtain back, a loud thump against the wall. I jumped back, my breath catching in my throat. For a long moment, I didn't move, didn't breathe. Then I heard it walk away. Not run, walk. The soft crunch of footsteps over dry dirt. Slow, deliberate dragging. It moved toward the backyard, disappearing into the distance. I didn't sleep after that. The next morning, I found tracks in the dirt around the house. At first, I thought they were hoof prints, maybe a stray deer or a coyote. But when I looked closer, my stomach turned. They weren't hooves. They were long, human-like toes, stretching out from the print like something had almost gotten the shape right, but not quite. We packed up that morning and drove to my brother's place in town. Stayed there for 3 nights. When we finally came back, I walked the property with my shotgun, checking every inch. I found nothing, but that didn't make me feel better, because I know it's still out there, watching, waiting, and sometimes, late at night, when the wind dies down and the desert goes silent, I swear I can hear Daniel's voice calling me from the fence line. Daddy, come here. I don't go outside anymore. Story 2. I've been a trucker for over 20 years, but there are some things that stick with you. Things that creep into your head at night when you're parked at some quiet rest stop. Engine off, the world silent, except for the occasional groan of a passing semi. This is one of those things. Back in the early 2000s, I was running freight from Arizona to Utah, a route I'd taken more times than I could count. Long stretches of highway, nothing but open desert and the occasional gas station. It was a lonely drive, the kind that made you feel like the last man on earth. It was late, maybe 2, 3 in the morning. I was somewhere near the Navajo Nation, the land stretching endlessly on either side of the road, black as ink. The only light came from my headlights, cutting through the darkness like a knife. That's when I saw him. He was walking along the shoulder, a thin, bony figure wrapped in an oversized coat. The coat looked too big for him, like he was swallowed up inside of it. His head was bowed, and his arms hung loosely at his sides. Now, I've picked up my fair share of hitchhikers. You see a lot of them out here. Folks down on their luck, stranded tourists, guys just looking for a ride to the next town. But something about this one made my stomach knot up. Then he moved. As I passed, he lifted his arm. Not like a normal hitchhiker with a thumb out, but his whole arm, stiff and jerky, like a broken puppet. The motion was all wrong, too mechanical, too unnatural. My hands tightened on the wheel, and every instinct I'd screamed, "Don't stop." I didn't. I kept going, pressing the pedal just a little harder. My rig roared down the highway, leaving him behind in the darkness. I exhaled, feeling the tension in my shoulders ease. Then I saw him in the mirror. He was running, not jogging, not sprinting running, faster than anything human should be able to run. His long coat flapped wildly behind him, and his legs moved in an unnatural blur. I checked the speedometer. 60. No way. No way in hell. I slammed my foot down, pushing it to 70, then 80. My truck shuddered, the highway rushing past in a blur of blacktop and faded white lines. But he was still there. And then I saw his face, grinning. Not a normal grin, not one that belonged to any man. It stretched too wide, the skin around his mouth pulled tight, his teeth yellow and too many. His eyes glowed in my mirror, catching the taillights like an animal's. That's when the fear really set in. I gritted my teeth, forcing myself to focus on the road. Don't look, just drive. The engine roared beneath me, the truck vibrating as I pushed it harder than I ever had before. Then, just as suddenly as he had appeared, he was gone. I didn't see him stop. He didn't slow down or veer off into the desert. 1 second he was there, keeping pace with me like some nightmare creature, and the next, the road behind me was empty. I didn't question it, didn't try to rationalize it. I just kept driving. When I finally reached a truck stop a few miles down, my hand was shaking so bad I could barely light a cigarette. My nerves were shot, my body buzzing with leftover adrenaline. I must have looked like hell, because an old man sitting on a bench outside the store eyed me for a long moment before speaking. "You okay, son?" I hesitated. It sounded crazy, but I had to tell someone. So I did. I told him about the hitchhiker, the way he moved, the way he ran, the way he grinned. The old man listened quietly, nodding. When I finished, he exhaled, slow and deep, then said something that made my stomach turn. "You're lucky." "Lucky?" I repeated. That didn't feel lucky. "Sometimes," he said, looking me dead in the eyes, "they follow you home." I checked out of that conversation real quick. I bought a black coffee, sat in my truck, and waited until the sun came up before I moved again. I never took that route again. Story 3. I was 14 the summer it happened. Our ranch sat at the edge of nowhere, southern Utah, miles of nothing but dry fields and thick woods stretching in all directions. The house was old, the kind that creaked even when nobody was moving. At night, it got so dark outside that you couldn't see your own hands in front of your face. The silence stretched for miles. We had a dog named Duke, an old mutt with a thick scar across his snout and the meanest growl you ever heard. He wasn't afraid of anything. Not coyotes, not rattlesnakes, not even the mountain lions that sometimes came down from the hills. But that night, Duke didn't want to go outside. It was just past 10. I was getting ready for bed when I heard him scratching at the back door, whining low in his throat. That was unusual. He never whined. It was like he was asking permission, something he'd never done before. I grabbed a flashlight and stepped out onto the porch. The summer air was thick and still, the kind that pressed down on your chest. The woods about 50 yards away were quiet, too quiet. No cicadas, no wind, just silence, thick as a grave. "Come on, Duke," I said, stepping off the porch. He didn't move. He just stood there, ears flat against his head, staring at the tree line. His hackles were raised, so high he looked twice his size. I followed his gaze. At first, I thought it was an animal, a deer maybe or a coyote, something low to the ground. But then it moved, fast and jerky, like it was dragging itself on all fours. It had hair, long and matted, and its limbs bent wrong, like a puppet with its strings tangled. A woman, or something trying to be a woman. Her arms and legs didn't move like they should. She crawled too fast, her hands and feet slapping against the dirt like raw meat hitting the counter. I could hear it, wet and sticky, even from the porch. My body locked up. I couldn't breathe, couldn't blink. She stopped. Her head lolled to one side, like her neck was broken. I still remember the way her hair clung to her face, dark and thick and dripping with something that wasn't water. Then she grinned, her mouth stretched too far, her lips peeling back until they nearly touched her ears. Her teeth weren't right, too long, too many. And then she spoke. "Come help me, sweetheart." It was my mother's voice. Exactly my mother's voice. Soft and warm and familiar, like when she used to tuck me in at night. But it wasn't coming from my mother. It was coming from that thing. Duke exploded into barking, snapping his teeth, fur bristling. The sound shattered the trance I didn't even know I was in. My legs unlocked. I grabbed Duke by the collar and ran inside, slamming the door behind us. I stood there, shaking, my breath coming in quick, shallow gasps. Duke whined, his body pressed against my legs, muscles tight. And then, scratch. Long, slow, deliberate. Right outside the door. Scratch. Scratch. I backed away, heart hammering against my ribs. Duke growled low, his whole body trembling. Then silence. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my bed with the flashlight clutched in my hands, staring at the door, waiting for it to open. The next morning, when the sun was high and warm, I found the back door covered in scratches. Long, deep gouges like fingernails dragging through the wood. Clumps of hair, dark, wet, and wrong, were tangled in the handle. We moved off that ranch the next year. I never told my mother what I saw that night. Never told anyone. But sometimes when I go back to visit, when the wind is still and the woods are quiet, I swear I hear my own voice calling me from the trees. "Come help me, sweetheart."